Well, what I'm going to talk about feeds kind of directly off of what you just said in terms of looking at the neuropsychology, what's going on in the brain, and how you can approach that as a way to do therapy. But I have got a few pictures. Can I do a bit of a PowerPoint? Because it's kind of, you can explain it, but if you see a little bit, it will help. All right, so neurofeedback. It's basically looking at brain activity, which is also called EEG, or an electroencephalogram, or brain waves, and giving you information about what your brain is doing as a way of changing how people function, feel, think. It's been around for a little while, but it's become much easier to do in your office recently because computers have gotten more powerful and smaller. So it is something you can do in a therapy office as a way of training now. It's a long thing to explain, but basically it involves the brain produces electrical activity. That's part of how it works. There's chemicals and there's electrical activity. It's electrochemical response is the way that the brain cells talk to each other. And that is really how you learn, how you function. Everything that happens with the brain is determined by the interaction of the electricity and the chemicals. So one way to change that is to take medication. That's the chemical way. And another way to change that is to work with learning to regulate your electrical activity. So it's called brain training. So your brain produces this EEG. Then it's recorded with electrodes placed on the scalp. Electrodes are a bit like a stethoscope. They listen to what's going on. They're not putting anything in. So this is not electroconvulsive therapy. It's not shocking people, but it's measuring what's coming out. So those are them little tiny gold cups. You just stick them, or silver, it could be different metals. You stick them on the scalp in different places. Or they could be embedded in a cap, and you put a cap on, and you squirt special gels in there to make the signal conduct better. So those are stuck on your head. I think I've got a picture of someone wired up there. So it's painless. They just stick them all over. There's a certain area, there's a map of where to put the electrodes, which is an international system. So everybody who's doing neurofeedback is measuring in the same place. So then the information from that is fed into the computer. So that is zigzags, like you would see, maybe you've seen an EEG report. The basic information from your brain looks like this. The brain waves look like that. What makes this different from a neurologist who looks at that raw picture and is trained over years and years to look for issues, major issues like seizures or sleep problems in the EEG, with neurofeedback, that's then digitized in your computer, converted to number form, and then from that you can compare it to norms and come up with diagnoses. Certain patterns of brainwave activity reflect certain problems you may or may not be having with your brain. Those are the places. The International System of Placement, it covers all the areas of your brain. So that's like looking at a head from the top straight down. So that'll be your nose there, and your ears. So these are your orbital frontal cortex. The frontal cortex, that's the front part of your brain, very important area. The central strip, the temporal lobes of the T's, parietal lobe and the occipital lobe. So all those different regions, you would expect different types of activity in different amounts at different times. And once you understand that, then you can measure somebody, come up with, okay, you're feeling anxious, and at the front of your head there's way too much fast activity, so let's try and train you to bring it down. So that's a cap, another way of doing the wires, and that's the box that feeds, then that box is then plugged into your laptop, and that the laptop is generating, digitizing this into numbers, computing, working out the characteristics, processing the signal, saying, we only look at speeds of between about 1 hertz and 40 hertz. Those are characteristics of waves. There's a bit of physics in this as well. And then that is broken down. This is a wave, typical brain wave. You're looking at the size of the wave, the space between the peaks of the wave, the height of the wave. So you want different amounts of different waves in different areas in your brain, and that's what the computer's working out. And then it will give you various different types of reports, depending on what system you use, that will help you analyze that and work out, does this match the person's symptom? And then we can try and train them to fix it. So those are the different waves you might look for. Different waves have different functions. Slow ones are delta. There, when you're mainly asleep, you get more of those, or in little babies. And beta at the bottom, that's your focus concentration. But if you have too much, it turns to anxiety. And if you don't have enough, maybe you've got ADHD and you can't focus properly. Those are the kind of things we're looking at. The different brainwaves have different characteristics. And the crucial part of the feedback is the computer also works out, okay, how can I generate pictures or sounds or some kind of feedback to give the person the information so that they know what type of brainwave they're producing, and then they can learn to change it. So a typical example would be ADHD. You might measure on the top of their head here and see too much slow waves. So that person finds it really hard to focus when they should be focusing, and instead they start daydreaming. When the teacher starts to talk, they start to... And it's not really willfulness or, being naughty. It's that their brain is literally producing slow waves instead of the faster waves more commonly associated with concentrating. So you could teach them, you could hook them up to the system and say, okay, whenever you produce the slow waves, you're going to get a boom sound. Whenever you produce the fast waves, you're going to get ting, 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 and you're going to get a picture moving. And over time, the person will literally learn to be able to produce more of the faster waves. So basically, neurofeedback relies on both classical and operant conditioning, the basic principles of learning. Something that is rewarded, you'll do more of, and something that has got a more aversive response, you'll do less of. And so your brain is conditioned into being able to produce waves that are suitable for the task at hand. Underlying all this is brain plasticity, which is a big concept, but it's basically the idea that the brain can at any time change. It can rewire itself, it can reconnect, make new networks, and those new networks are learning. So you can learn something one way, but you can relearn it at any time in your life another way. Plasticity really underlies all therapy, from CBT, trauma techniques, all of them. It's changing the learning in your brain, which is changing the way the areas in your brain are talking to each other. So neurofeedback is just another way of doing that and can be used alongside other therapies. Maybe if someone's stuck, they're not moving as fast as you want, it goes really well along with any other therapy. And you also need therapy skills to do it because you can hook someone up and they can start to learn, but they might get frustrated. What are you going to do then? Maybe they'll start having memories of painful past experiences. What are you going to do then? So you either need to be a technician that works with a therapist or a neurotherapist who's a therapist and doing neurofeedback so that you can deal with issues that come up in the session. And basically keeping people motivated is a big part. Keep helping them to keep going. That's it, really. My training, I've been doing neurofeedback. I think I've just gone into my 5th year of doing it now. I can't believe it. It's gone in a flash, but it's really, really interesting. I had a technical background, which helped a lot because there's a lot of software and hardware technology involved, and it can be quite frustrating when you can't work out what's gone wrong. You can have 19 wires on someone's head. You've got loads of wires connecting your computer. There's many steps along the way things can go wrong, so not being afraid of computers is a good prerequisite. And then the psychology training. I've now done clinical psychology training as well, and the two things go really, really well. The kind of work that I really do is I work in private practice, and in Trinidad there are 3 different people doing, I think 3 different offices. Me and Waveney Richards, who gave me my big start in neurofeedback and I still work with, she's got people doing it in her office, and another office in the east somewhere, Daniel St. Bryce. I think he also does, I'm pretty sure he does neurofeedback as well. I'm not sure how and what equipment he uses because there's various different ways you can do it. But it's basically all private practice, though I did have a stage of going into a school 1 day a week and doing it in the school, which was great, because the children are not disrupting their day, they're just popping out for half an hour session and kind of getting their brains primed for learning and going back into the classroom, and that was a good way to do it. Some of the teachers didn't find it great because they found the kids were missing valuable lesson time, but it makes a lot of sense to do it that way. It's something I would consider doing more, and people could go in and do that. You can work with loads of different conditions. Over the years, neurofeedback, there's been a lot of research going on. It's most well-established research for ADHD and concentration problems, also anxiety, post-trauma, post-traumatic stress, and brain injury. But there's also smaller studies supporting its use for autistic spectrum disorders, addiction, pain, and headaches. And there's reports of clinical success in a lot of different areas, from depression, epilepsy is a well-proven area as well. Chronic fatigue, cognitive decline. People also use it for performance enhancement. So you've got athletes, international athletes using it to improve their game. There's the Canadian ski team who did really well a couple of years ago. They had a whole brain gym as part of their workout, and they trained their reaction time to be able to jump into their action really quickly. The people who do golf use it to be able to maintain a really calm and yet focused state just before they take their shots. But various athletes use it as well, and in academics as well. You can use it to just improve your performance, and creative people. Sometimes when they have a block, they'll come and say, look, just need to free this up. And if you can sort of find the area of the brain that might be off compared to norms and train that, you can get people to be able to get back their creativity. That's really it. In the field locally, as I said, there's just a few of us doing it. To find out, my main work, my clients are mainly children with some kind of learning or behavior problem. So half that and half adults with a mood or anxiety problem. But I've done also work with clients with tics, autistic spectrum disorders, seizure problems. So it's quite a range of people you can work with. And I also did a research study recently with women who've been through chemotherapy. They were either 2 to 6 years post-chemo and healthy, but found their brains weren't working as well anymore. So that was interesting. All of them reported increased memory after about 10 sessions, which is not a lot of sessions for neuro. It's quite a long-term commitment sometimes. So for 10 sessions to have made a difference was really interesting. To find out more, oh, well, here's a little bit more. That's what a map would look like if I put all the wires, 19 wires on your head, and I would be recording zigzags from each spot. And then over here, this is the norm database comparison. So 0 would be normal. So this person had excess amounts of action in the low frequencies and a lack of activity in the fast frequencies. That would be a kind of lack of focus type picture maybe. So all that produces pictures like this. That map did not match these, but this would be a problem map would look something like this. 0 is green, so 0 would be you're within the norm. So if you've got areas that are bright red, then this person's got too much of something going on over here, and too little of something going on over here. And a more normal picture would be more in the green. So that's how you can use the maps to pinpoint which areas of the brain stuff's happening in. So it's not like an fMRI, which would be the gold standard that you were referring to, but it's a different kind of measure. And this is a measure that you can use quite frequently in your office. So, and when you compare the findings of EEG and QEEG, this is called quantified EEG and fMRI, they seem to find the same areas of dysfunction in the same person at the same time. So they kind of match. If you want to find out more, there's not much in Trinidad. You can talk to me or talk to one of the other few providers. But internationally, the ISNR is the International Society for Neurofeedback and Research. And they promote the whole field. They have a lot of they categorize lots of different problems people have and research associated with it in neurofeedback. They give an explanation of what it is. They hold a conference every year. They have training opportunities. The BCIA is a certifying body in the States, so you can get the BCN stamp of your training. I mean, you don't need it here. You don't even need that in the States, but it's kind of like a good thing to have, to show that you've been well trained and you've done, that requires 100 hours of clinical practice. You have to be a client yourself. You have to sit a few exams. And then the Journal of Neurotherapy published the research. So you can find that on the same website. So that's about it.